Hi everyone, welcome to this week's Mobility Flow number 2. Okay, so last week we had a longer video which was about 30 minutes because I wanted to introduce you to the warm-ups and one of our fundamental positions, the 4-point posture or 4-point position. And hopefully you've done your homework and you've been practicing that and you're ready to add something now into an extra sort of link into that chain. That's what we're looking at doing each week. We'll work through some fundamental positions and then we can actually add those with linking movements to be able to create a sort of longer flow, which means you can actually move and flow between different positions really smoothly. It's great for your core strength, great for your coordination and sort of range of movement as well. Okay, so I won't go through the same process as last week. We should always be doing, like in the first class, we should be doing the warm-up exercises, which is warming the wrists and the shoulders, stretching the lower back into the legs and calves because there's obviously some isometric strength and there's quite a lot of force through the joints and so on and so forth. So make sure that if you haven't watched week 1, make sure you go back, do week 1 and actually learn those mobility exercises, warm-up exercises, and you should be doing that before every flow. Okay, cool. So that said, let's move on then and let's just recap last week really quickly. So what we did to start with, we worked on the 4-point position. So just to remind you, we were basically on our hands were underneath our shoulders, we had our feet about hip width apart, and then all we were doing is we were lifting our knees off the floor just slightly, so you can see my shins are parallel to the floor, and I'm holding that position. That's the 4-point position. Then we practiced actually transitioning our weight from one side up to the other, so we could actually learn to be able to pick one hand and foot up so we can move into the next movement that we wanted to do. And that's really important, and we don't want to do that by overcompensating and throwing our weight from one side to the other because we're going to lose balance, and then obviously the movements won't be smooth, you're more likely to fall over. And when you actually want to apply this to maybe another sport, something like jiu-jitsu or whatever you're doing, those movements will also be sort of overcompensated and you'll lose stability, which means that you're not going to be as efficient in your movements. So we're looking at doing minimal movements, lifting the hands and feet up at the same time, nice and controlled, being able to hold them for a few seconds and then drop them back down. And then you'll remember we also then move forwards and backwards. Now we're not going to move a lot forwards and a lot backwards, but it's being able to adjust our positions if we want to flow into another movement, or if we run out of space in the room at the end of a flow, we can just move backwards a couple of places, but within that flow context. So all that meant is we had to pick up opposite hand, opposite foot, move forward slightly, put them down together, pick them up together, move forward slightly, come back. And then we looked at a little bit of a lateral movement as well. So if we go back to that start position where we could try and step at the same time, one direction and the other. Again, just trying to have that control through the movements. And then the homework I gave you was that 4-point position and then bringing in that under switch position, that kick through position like this. So that was where we go from 4-point posture, 4-point position, that opposite knee comes through underneath. We're pushing that foot out, leading with the heel, keeping the leg straight. At the same time, we draw the hand into the hip with the fingers pointing up, so it keeps the hand out of the way. And then when we want to put it back down, we place them back down exactly where they were before. So we pivot back through, and we should be in exactly the same place. Same on the other side, drawing through. That should have been your homework. For hopefully, you've been practicing that a little bit, it should feel quite smooth. You should be able to jump a little bit between. You can add some explosion to the movements and it should feel really nice. So that is our 4-point position and 4-point position to under switch. Left foot if it's left under switch, right foot if it's is the right foot under switch. Cool, okay. So let's move on. So our next flow then is going to be from what we call the bridge position, okay? And the bridge position basically means it's very similar to the 4-point position, but it's almost just reversed, okay? So we have our feet, again, about hip width apart, and obviously our knees in line with our toes, and then we're going to place our hands behind us, just slightly wider or in line with the shoulders, depending on your flexibility. Some people won't be able to have it too narrow because of shoulder flexibility, so you might have to have your hands a little bit wider. So go for what feels right, don't force anything. So you're trying to place it behind you, and you can see that my body now makes this kind of W shape, or an M shape in fact, an M shape. Okay, so all I'm doing then is once I've made that M shape, I'm trying to push with my hands, keep my arms locked straight, and push with my feet into the ground. And what that'll do is it'll lift my bum off the floor slightly. So it's subtle, that's down, and that's up. But again, I'm now off the floor and I can move my center quite freely. Now what I want you to do here now is feel where that center point is. So lift yourself up, and you're trying to keep your head in line, so you're not looking up too much, you're not looking down, trying to keep it in line. So you'd be looking slightly up in this position, and then you're just trying to move forwards and backwards. One that's gonna really help with the wrist flexibility anyway. And also we're working into the shoulders. We've got this isometric hold going on, so we're working the flexibility of the shoulders too. And we're just trying to find where that sort of center line point is. So for me, it feels about there, okay? So this is our sort of basic bridge position, okay? So from this point now, it's very much like before, relax now. It's very much like the 4-point position, where we then look to try and lift opposite limbs again, and we try and balance without shifting again our weight. So if I'm doing it this way for you guys, you can see my feet are about hip width apart, my knees are in line with my toes are pointing forwards towards you, yeah? My hands are behind, and all I'm going to do is just lift myself off the floor ever so slightly, like so. Okay, now at this point, this is a static posture, and I can't move without moving my weight from one side to the other. So I don't want to have to move my weight too much. There will be some movement, some compensation obviously, but I don't want to have to move my weight too much. Here's an overcompensation to pick my hand and my foot up. Okay, it doesn't want to be such a gross sort of large movement. So what I do want to do is make it as small as possible, lifting my hand and my foot maybe no more than 1 centimetre off the ground. Ideally just 1 millimetre, enough to slide a piece of paper underneath. So here we go. So as I try and do that, I try and pushing with my right foot, and I'm pushing with my left hand to be able to pick those limbs up. And you can see there's a slight shift in my shoulders, but it's small. And then I place it down again. You're trying to minimize that movement as much as possible. And then I do the same on the other side. Now my right shoulder's a bit sore at the minute, so there will be a bigger compensation. So my left foot pushes into the floor, my right hand pushes into the floor, I pick up, and then I place them back down again. And then just relax off. So that's what I want you to practice to start with, is from that bridge position, lifting one foot, lifting one hand, holding it for a few seconds, and then placing it down. Finding where that balance point is for you. And as you do this and you practice it more, you'll become stronger, you'll become more stable, and the movement compensation will become smaller anyway. So this is why it's great to practice. Here's the other side, right foot's off, left hand's off, come back down again. That's what I want you to practice. So pause the video, practice that movement, and then when you come back, we're going to add on the next flow, okay, the next movement for you. So pause now. Awesome, so welcome back. Hopefully you've had a good run at that. You should be feeling it maybe through your shoulders, through your elbows. Again, there's quite a lot of strength required, and it's an unusual position for us to hang out in as well. Normally we're much more used to having our hands in front, so having our hands behind you might find quite challenging. And like I say, if it's a flexibility issue, just make it wider. Also, if you start to feel any sort of tension or pain coming into the exercise, just rest and stop for a bit, and you can come back to it either a bit later or the next day, okay? Cool, so that's our bridge position. So now what we want to do is we want to try and link these two positions together, the 4-point position and the bridge position. And we do that really simply, okay? And it's really nice movement to do. So if we start in our bridge position, so here I go, I'm setting up, I'm making sure my posture's right. So my feet are hip width apart, my knees are over my toes in the sense of they're in line, my hands are behind, I've got my palms and fingers spread nice and wide to give me extra stability, and I lift that bum off the floor, finding that middle position. At this point now, I'm going to shift my weight into my left hand and my right foot, so I can lift this foot, my left foot, and I can lift my right hand. So there's the opposite. Now all I'm going to do is like the opposite basically of what we did in that under switch, because this is almost the under switch position. If all I have to do is that, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this left leg underneath as I pivot on my toe, and I then square my hands to the front, and I'm back in, as you can see, this 4-point position. Now to get back to that bridge position, all I'm going to do is just come underneath, like I'm going to do an under switch, but I continue spinning, I bring that hand right round, and I place it down on the floor. So let me do that a few times slowly so you can see it, and I'll do it from a couple of different angles, okay? So here we go. See how my arm swings wide to get right back behind, and I adjust my left hand slightly if I need to. Let me change the position. a good setup to start with. Okay, here I come. So I come over this big swing with the arm to my 4-point position, big swing back to my bridge position. You can see my feet are reset, my hands are reset. One more time, I'll show it from the other side. Here I go into my bridge, big swing, come through, hands go down, big swing back with the arm, hands go back, reset the palms if you need to. So that means you can now transition from the 4-point position to the bridge position. And inside of all of that, you can throw in under switches as well. This is where the flow starts to get a bit more interesting. So as you can see, we go from this 4-point position. Let's say we're going to start in this position now. I can go to an under switch. I can come back. I can go to the bridge position. I can go back through. I can under switch on the other side. So now you can see I can start to roll between different positions, and it becomes a real flow rolling around. It's going to really help your mobility when you're low on the floor in any kind of sport that you do, being able to spin from one side to the other, keeping control all the time, starts to become much more dynamic. And then coming back to that restart position, relaxing down and cooling off. How's that? So that's what I want you to practice those movements for a week. So to recap, you've got your 4-point position that you're already doing with the under switch. Now we're going to add in this bridge position and the transition to the 4-point position, which is a big wave. Leg comes underneath, palms go down, underneath the shoulders, a good distance into that 4-point position. We just come back, big swing with the arm to bring yourself back to that original position. Have fun playing with that. Don't go too fast to start with. The key is if you can do it slowly and with control, it's always going to be much better when you speed it up. You won't overcompensate the movements, and also you're going to get the extra strength gains as well by doing it slow. So take your time, enjoy it, and I'll see you next week for number 3. Have a great week, guys. Bye.